Clive Palmer promises a 3% mortgage cap. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee because, well, the UAP, Clive Palmer, have come out with a pledge to cap mortgages at 3%. Now the question is, will this be enough to get them votes? Now some of Palmer's policies I like, some of them I don't like. He's calling for all Australian super to be invested in Australia. So, as someone who's already forced to invest a portion of my money in superannuation, now I'll be forced to invest it in Australia and not take advantage of other countries that have other opportunities, which doesn't really sit well with me. Palmer and his UAP, they seem to be very interventionist, very populist, but will this 3% guarantee or cap, will it be enough to pull some people over to his party? If you're worried about losing your home, if you've got, if you jumped in and you could see interest rates are going up, would you stomach a few years of the UAP in charge? Because, well, what's Labor or Liberal going to do for you? It's going to be more of the same, isn't it? At least it'll be entertaining, that's for sure. And we'll probably get some more One Nation cartoons coming out that are gold quality. So let's look at a few things. First, I want to bring up this little clip shared by Australia Talks on Twitter about, where Palmer is talking about this policy.
This crisis has been created by men and women, and so it can be solved by men and women. But only the United Party is facing up to the challenge and has an immediate solution to take the nation's debt away from the determiners of public and fiscal policy and to ensure that all Australians may keep their home and small businesses and rely on capital generated by home loan mortgages. The national crisis is we must preserve the wealth that each Australian currently has and preserve home ownership, which has been the cornerstone of our country for 70 years.
So they want to preserve home ownership. And I mean, that's, as I've been saying many times, that's part of our culture here in Australia. It's houses, houses, houses. Think about it, there are a lot of people that want a correction in the market to get in, but there are a lot of people that want it to stay how it is.
The United Australia Party has high on its agenda the implementation of policies that will allow Australians to enter the home market for the first time. Australians can never trust Liberal, Labor or the Greens. They've sold out our country. How then will the United Australia Party save our country?
This is one thing they repeat quite often, is Australians can't trust Liberal or Labor. And there's an old dude on who's laying into the PM at the pub. Guys, do you expect the politicians to take care of you? I'm kind of the mindset they're going to look out for themselves. The best strategy we can do as a people is to minimize the damage they can do, is so they can get out of the way of us living our lives and getting the best life we can. It's not depending on them, because they're always going to let you down.
Save you from losing your home long term. Firstly, by dealing with $1 trillion of debt head on. By implementing measures designed to protect the Australian economy and to impact the failures of the political class of Australians represented by the Liberal and Labor parties. Australian iron ore is supplying the boom in manufacturing in Asia, upon which the economies of Japan, Korea and China and the rest of Asia depend. Asia is reliant on Australian iron ore. Without it, Asian economies cannot function. That's the reality. Tens of trillions of dollars has been invested in China, Japan and Korea based on the supply of Australian iron ore. Their supply chain and the prosperity of their people, tens and hundreds of millions of them, depend upon receiving exports of Australian iron ore.
He's not wrong. We are the biggest iron ore exporter in the world.
To our country. Australia has become a quarry upon which Asia and Asian countries base their prosperity. This becomes apparent when we consider the iron ore market supplies over 75% of the Asian market. And all of those exports you can see from China that go to the United States, that go to Europe, all come and all start in this country. South American infrastructure and production cannot be...
So that's the end of this clip. And thank you to Australia Talks for sharing it on Twitter. What I suspect Palmer was about to talk about was, I think, a 15% license or levy they want to put on all iron ore exports and use that to pay off the government debt. So what do you reckon, guys? Paying off debt, guaranteeing 3% mortgage rates, which pretty much means we're all going to be paying for it in the end. Do you think that's enough to win some votes? Could some people go in the House of Reps with Palmer's party? I honestly think that this will attract certainly some attention, but it feels like the more independent-leaning parties are just going to be harvesting votes from each other. He needs to get a big chunk of people from one of the majors. We'll see if people are desperate about their homes. 3% rate cap may be what they want. So, Palmer has outlined, and this is from Mortgage Business, Clive Palmer has outlined the UAP's housing policy at the National Press Club, promising a 3% ceiling on home loans. Now, notice how we're talking about housing affordability, housing issues in the run-up to the election. This is going to be the key issue here we have in Australia. I guarantee you this is going to have a big impact on this election and a lot of people. It's not going to be the lockdowns. It's not going to be the mandates. That's becoming irrelevant to a lot of people. Here in Queensland now, you're sure they're extending the emergency powers in Victoria. They did the same here in Queensland. But now they've gotten rid of the mandates to go into cafes. I did a video on that. Maybe I didn't release it. I'll find it and put it up today. So that's good news. Good news is happening. Life is returning to normal. So now we can focus on the things that cause us the biggest issues. So Australian mining magnate and Australia United Party chairman Clive Palmer has declared his party's economic policy for housing, revealing its intention to introduce a 3% cap on home loan rates for the next 5 years. Speaking at the National Press Club on Thursday, Mr. Palmer said that Australia currently faces a crisis, suggesting that 40% of Australians are suffering from mortgage stress. Mr. Palmer also claimed that when the mortgage rates rise to 4%, 60% of our mortgages fail in this country, and that when mortgages rise to 6%, 80% of our mortgages fail. Australia faces a crisis with around 80% of holders of mortgages in this country likely to lose their homes, and Australia faces an unprecedented national emergency, Mr. Palmer stated. Now, here's the thing. You've got people calling for rates are going to go up and then the housing sector will crash and then I can jump in and buy that bargain. I honestly think something like this, massive government intervention to prop up the housing sector, is more likely. We've seen it. We've seen that we've had our first recession in 28 years. Look at the intervention into the economy. There will be people demanding the government intervenes. There'll be people calling for it. So remember, I'd actually say being a property owner here in Australia, you're somewhat a protected species. The government of this country must move to protect and defend all Australians from that outcome regardless of international pressure. The United Australia Party's plan is that under former Coalition MP Craig Kelly's leadership, it would assert the government's control under the Constitution and set a 3% annum maximum interest rate on home loans, Mr. Palmer explained. Just last week, the Commonwealth Bank predicted there'll be 4 home loan increases this year, Mr. Palmer said. The chief of the IMF has confirmed it's inevitable rates will rise. And after the election, we'll face runaway inflation, which will lead to higher interest rates, which will devastate Australian families and businesses and destroy the independence and freedom of the nation. Mr. Palmer then noted that Australia has seen its debt exceed $1 trillion over the pandemic, and that based on the projected interest rates, he estimated it will take 180 years to get this nation back to where it was when John Howard left office. We don't have 180 years to act, so Morrison's plans won't save Australians from defaulting on their loans, Mr. Palmer said. That won't stop Australian homes and assets from being sold to foreign interests, who would be the only buyers with money in the market, as Australians lose their homes because of increased home loan rates. Mr. Palmer then outlined his plan for housing in Australia if UAP were to secure office, a 3% cap on home loans for the next 5 years. So, what do you reckon? Let's have a bit of a talk about this. I think he will appeal to a lot of people. I think there are a lot of people who are desperate, who are in trouble, or maybe who are at the edge of their mortgage, may give Palmer a shot. Remember the last time he ran, he got a lot of votes. A lot of votes he even got in the House. We'll see if that can make a difference. At the very least, this could push some of the major parties. Now, is it a good thing? Should we have this type of intervention in the market? Well, I would argue not. But I'm not the typical Australian, am I, guys? Or a lot of us who are watching aren't the typical Australian. The typical Aussie is happy for this intervention, calls for it, and expects it from our leaders. What would be the long-term damage of this? I don't even hazard a guess. I'll leave that to you in the comments, guys, to discuss. But there you go. We'll have to see. What do you reckon? I mean, I would say this is a vote winner to people who are at the edge of losing their homes. You know, they'd call for something like this. Some of his policies of the UAP, I'm not happy with. I like the one where people can write off the interest on their primary residence. You know, pay yourself, pay for your own housing before you pay the tax man. We'll have to see. This is definitely going to be an interesting election, everyone. So thank you all for watching, guys. I can't show my outros at the moment. I have to redo the slides because of new ASIC legislation changes. Ay, boy, oh boy. I'm with regards to that, I'm not a finfluencer, but I make recommendations or referrals to businesses that I use and that we both get a deal. And that's actually, I don't think that's allowed anymore. I need to apply for a license to be able to do that. So to recommend that people go to a safe, legitimate business that gives you chess-sponsored shares. But then you can recommend a crypto scam. No problem. It's bloody clown world. It really is. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Have a great day. You know how to support the channel. If you are a fan, like, share, and subscribe. Do all of that. And let me know what you think about this 3% mortgage rate cap. Would that be enough for you to vote for UAP? Even if you're not in trouble, would you want a 3% cap to ensure that your assets and your properties that you've invested don't collapse? You've got to think about that too. They're going to be people vote for the Greens because they know that will keep their investment properties higher because the Greens are a bunch of not in my backyard lot. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day, and I'll see you at the next episode of HeiseSays. 3% caps. Boy. It's going to be a fun election.